The second one, again, has Azalian as the main villain. He is a bit overused in that respect. And basically it's what's known as a Death Trilogy. And basically it's a series of adventures which are very closely linked together. In so much the fact is you run them in very rapid succession with no breaks between them. Which involves hunting down a cult of people which steal souls and put them into these hourglasses. And yeah, excuse my neighbourhood, it's a bit busy and I think the wind might be picking up on the camera. Right, so they're going around collecting souls, and it turns out that they're using it to power something called the device, which effectively would allow Azalian to transcend the plane and... oh dear, it's raining. Now carry on anyway. Transcend the plane and escape. Now, before he actually used it, he was a very smart fellow, because Azalian's got like intelligence of 20. And he tested it. And he tested it on one of his clones he made many, many years ago. Again, in a failed experiment to escape. And unfortunately, it also backfired on him, because what happened was the negative energy plane partially infused with this person and created a new persona called Death, which is, to my knowledge, the first and most prevalent of the negative energy elementals. And he is just a shrouded mist-like, not shrouded shadow-like figure with a human skull and a human's skeletal hand, and that's it. That's all he is. And he's bloody terrifying, I'll tell you. Especially if you ever have to fight him in battle, because he drains levels like you wouldn't believe. And drain levels in D&D, in my opinion, is bad juju. Right. So, where was I? Oh yes. Right. And basically, the whole campaign culminates with the destruction of Ilank, the city in Darkham. It's not blown up or anything like that, it's just that by creating death, he created this bubble of negative energy around the city, and anything within the bubble died and immediately reanimated as intelligent undead. So basically people were dying and reanimating as themselves, but in undead form. And here was the crux of the problem. Because that was majorly that was the main feature of the end of the campaign, the fact that you died, you came back and you played an undead character. It came in a box set, and boy do I love box sets. I'm going to have to do an ode to box sets soon, I really do love them. Shame you don't get them anymore. Well, not often anyway. Yeah, so what happened was, they created this box set called Death Requiem. It's the hardest one to get, in my honest opinion, out of the entire Ravenloft line. And it took me a best part of 5-6 years of looking to find one at a reasonable price, because most of them were going at ridiculous prices. It was printed towards the end of TSR's run, which means it got less print runs than most of the products did. And because it was brought out in the time that White Wolf were running around with their werewolf and their vampire lines, people thought that playing monsters was cool. And so if you put if you give D&D a character rules to be a skeletal rogue or a zombie priest or a vampire fighter, they'll jump at the chance, and it sold in bucket loads even to people that didn't play Ravenloft, which is why it was so hard to get hold of. You know, people were buying it even though it was part 3 of an adventure, and tossing the adventure out the window just for the undead rules. They were that popular. So as such, unfortunately, it's quite hard to find, and I was quite lucky in getting mine for, I think it was £20. And to be honest with you, that has taken me a long time to get it, and I was very happy to get it, because I pretty much finished off my Ravenloft collection, with the exception of the Mask of the Red Death, which I'm not a huge fan of. I just get it for completeness sake. As a little aside, Mask of the Red Death is basically Ravenloft rules supplanted into the real world in the 1990s. It's basically an attempt by D&D to be Cthulhu by Gaslight, and it doesn't work in my opinion. Some people can make it work, I don't like it. Right, so basically that was the second set of adventures, and what that did was unfortunately, during that instance, Azalian was destroyed, or fortunately, because he's a villain after all. And it was very obscured as to what his fate was, because the updated material that came out after the fact didn't really state what was going on. It was assumed that Death was now the domain lord for Darkham, which is where Azalian used to rule, despite the fact that he was never seen outside of the city, which is now known, the destroyed city now known as Necropolis, which had this bubble of negative energy around it, where if you walked through the bubble, you would immediately die. and then reanimate. Occasionally undead would venture out of it and it would create nice little plot hooks, things like that. Right. The third event is quite possibly the most... it's a big thing if you're a fan of the campaign setting. To everybody else, it's a non-event, and that's the death of Dr. von Richten. And anyone that was collecting D&D books in the time would remember Dr. von Richten's name because there was a lot of supplements with his name on it. Now, back in Forgotten Realms days, you had Volvo's Guide to this and Elminster's Ecology to that. You know, having characters endorse products was popular, and it gave the product a sense of canon because it was effectively written by a character within the setting. And what Van Richten, being a monster hunter, produced a series of books called Van Richten's Guides to, and it was like werbeasts, vampires, the ancients or mummies, created, which are golems, and demons, Vistani, and these books have actually in later dates been amended and put into 3 collective volumes, which I think you may still be able to get off Amazon, because that's where I got mine from, long after the fact. So Van Richten held a certain degree of respect amongst certain AD&D players, even if they didn't play Ravenloft, because you could quite easily take the books he wrote and adapt them to any AD&D setting. And GMs loved them because it had lots of little cool... This is before 3.5 came out and gave you kits and... give you templates and stuff. It gave you the idea for tweaking around with monsters. Very, very popular. And basically, unfortunately, while fighting a particularly prevalent villain, because he does appear in a couple of other supplements, he unfortunately passed away. Or at least that's one of the endings to it. It's one of those few campaign... no, it's actually a big box adventure. It's one of those few adventures where you have multiple choices, and half of the choices are dictated by the player's actions, and the other half is dictated by the GM's mood. So one of several things could happen, although the canon ending is that Van Richten dies, but his body's never recovered, which leads a lot of the stories trying to find him so they can resurrect him, and that's a kind of running plot theme throughout the setting. The last big campaign event, and in my honest opinion the most disappointing because it never saw the light of day. I'm not sure if it has a name, it probably does, but I don't know what it is. Basically it was a big adventure. It wasn't world spanning, it was just Darken spanning, but Darken's quite a big place anyway, and it was basically resurrecting Lord Azalin and restoring him to the throne of Darken. And basically the idea was that you would interact with the 4 dukes that Darken had in place controlling it, and you would go through this adventure and you would restore Azalin to the throne, and he would reward you for your actions, and then the sudden realisation that you've been working for the bad guys all along would set in, and that would be the ending of it. And because the 3.5 material, which came out after TSR did the whole thing, I'd like to point out, by the way, between Van Richten's death and the one we're talking about now, TSR folded, Wizard Coast bought it, Wizard Coast sold the license on to White Wolf, who produced it as part of their Soul Sorcery line, and a fantastic job they did too.